Hey guys, Neil here with Jake. Get in here, Jake.
What's up, guys?
Hey, we just met each other at a tournament and been kind of running into each other in the course and decided to do some form work. I'm not a form expert, but I've been kind of researching it and practicing it more than Jake has, and so I thought it'd be fun to work on some form and see if we can make some improvements. So I'm going to try to give him some tips to mainly work on rounding today and use some of the drills that are popular online, like the one leg standstill and things like that. Anything else you want to add?
Out here with the pro,
No,
excited to
no.
get better.
We do have the tech disc, so we'll try to get those stats up on the screen while we're throwing here.
All right, before we get into the drill session with some actual throws where we're working on the issue, let's take a look at a form comparison to make it more clear what the issue is and what we're trying to work towards. Also, check out Jake's channel. I'll put it in the description on the screen. We'll plan to do some different kind of disc golf content on his channel in the future. And if you like this, give us a subscribe and a like, and let us know what you think in the comments. I sometimes like to use the term reach away instead of reach back, because if you reach straight forward in the direction your chest is facing, that will generally produce that 90-degree shoulder angle that we're looking for. I like to use Ezra Robinson on the left here as an example because it makes it very clear since he reaches away even wider than many pros. And the margin for error when reaching wider is small because you can go past 90 and it's still good. But if you try to reach away at 90 degrees and you're a little bit shorter than that, then it gets bad pretty quickly. Also, when trying to make a form change because of muscle memory, we usually don't quite get all the way there, and therefore we have to try to exaggerate to help us get closer to what we're trying to do. So keeping this image of Ezra in your mind can be helpful to get you to feel like you're exaggerating this reach away to avoid rounding. So in this picture, this is the moment that the brace is landing, and we can see on the left, Ezra has a lot of room between the disc and his body, his abdomen and his chest, which gives him plenty of space to pull the disc into the power pocket. Whereas on the right, the disc is being pulled around the chest and is getting stuck back there, and there's not really any chance to get to the power pocket because the disc is going to have to be pulled around the chest. Alright, so this next picture is just a few frames after the brace has landed. So on the left we can see Ezra Robinson has plenty of space to pull the disc in front of his chest into the power pocket. And on the right, the disc is still trapped and is going to have to be coming out and around now, and the shoulder is collapsed and under a lot more strain. Okay, so here we have the power pocket, and on the left, the green lines are highlighting another important shoulder angle, which is the one that controls the arm being lifted up, and this here shows keeping the elbow up and how that gives gives more space between the hand and the chest so that there's space for the disc. Now you will see the elbow drop down a little bit compared to what we see on the left here for when trying to throw higher into the air, for example, but we generally don't want to see it get down too far to where it's now close to the body and there's not much space, which is what we can see on the right side, and so the disc is still trapped behind the left pec and now has to come out and around. Whereas on the left, the disc can simply be launched out away from the body next. So here we can see the disc is about to be ejected, and the lines are showing the approximate path the disc took from the peak of the reach back to this point here. So on the left, we can see something that shows the out-in-out pattern, where the disc was reached out away from the body, and then the line slightly comes in, where that's where the disc was being pulled into the power pocket tight to the chest, and then it comes back out away from the chest. And on the right, of course, we see there was no option but to do a rounding arc to get the disc out away from behind the body.
All right, so for the one leg drill, one leg standstill, this is a great drill to work on anything because you're simplifying, taking away a bunch of other, things that you don't have to worry about. So you can just focus on a particular thing like head position or your reach back, coiling, off arm, and focus on one at a time. And build up the muscle memory slowly so that when you go to your walk up or your run up, hopefully it'll stick. But
hopefully we will.
you just have to come back multiple times.
Yeah.
So to get set up in this, we also want to work on the hyzer angle with this drill, just because the setup of the stance kind of lends itself better to hyzer, but also there's a lot of things with throwing on hyzer that help you also understand like other mechanics of the throw more easily than throwing on anhyzer. So to throw on hyzer, you're going to put your back leg here, just a little bit behind, and very little weight on it. And all your weight's going to be on your brace foot. Get your nose over your toes a little bit, and so that's going to create a forward lean, which will give the disc a little bit of hyzer. And we're focusing on rounding today. So for the reach back, we want reach straight away from your chest, coil, and then this is where we want the disc to be. We'll see where it is for Jake when he's in this position. I mean, like your arms and the way you coil, you might coil further or not as far, but this is where we want the disc instead of it being around your body like this. So we're going to work on that. And then to further simplify, instead of doing the one leg drill like dynamically, like coil, reach back, and throw, I think it's good to start just coiled and reached back in this position that we want to be in, and then throw from there and get a couple of those down before moving on to being more dynamic about it, so you can get used to that arm position. And so for Jake, I think the biggest like low-hanging fruit to work on is the rounding, and off-arm stuff, and head position is important too. We want to focus mostly on one thing at a time because that's hard to do more than once.
Yeah.
But for a second thing, try to not turn and look at the target during this drill. Just throw, and you want your chest and your head to mostly be facing this way when the disc is released. And we want the disc to be released out over here instead of over here. It'll kind of fly over. And it doesn't perfectly match up sometimes to like the full throw, especially if we're throwing softer. And let's start by throwing softer and more controlled to start with. Don't go for max power. And for different people, different cues help, but I think you should try, or maybe have you been thinking about pulling through in a straight line? I would
Not
recommend trying that and seeing how it works. Some people like to think more about coming in and out and rotating, but starting with that I think can help you get into a deeper power pocket. And we want to keep the elbow up and not rotate too fast. So get the elbow driving before you start rotating to keep the shoulder from collapsing, because if you rotate quickly, then the shoulder can collapse easily. All right.
Let's do it.
So this is where we want the disc roughly to be above, to make sure you're reaching back without already rounding. Rounding can come in as you start pulling through. You might still, have some rounding creep back in, but at least we want to start without rounding. And so now just try to pull through in a straight line. And that's fine. We're not going to look at the throw stats yet because we're just kind of warming up with this motion. In the real throw and the real reach back, we're not going to be as exaggerating, just going straight out and then coiling. We're going to be doing it kind of together, but we're doing this to get your arm used to reaching in the direction your chest is facing so that it doesn't cross the chest and turn into rounding. So how's it feeling?
Pretty solid.
So go ahead and pick up the pace a little bit then. Okay, 46 miles per hour. -6 nose, cool. And an 8-degree launch angle. That's good, nose down and throwing up.
Oh, sweet.
What are you thinking about anything in particular for that?
I'm just focused on getting my arm back right now.
Well, that's really good. So, and 13 degrees hyzer, so you are throwing hyzer, but that is kind of a small amount of hyzer. So for context, Tech Disc considers -4 degrees hyzer to +4 degrees anhyzer as a flat throw.
Okay.
So 13 degrees is, 9 degrees extra hyzer beyond flat. And so with a flippy disc, that will still turn over pretty easily. So I would recommend getting a little bit more nose over toes, and let's see if we can get you to like 20 degrees hyzer. Start increasing the power and see where it starts falling apart, and then take a step back, slow down, and then keep doing that process until you're able to push the power further without the form breaking down. So you see there, it looked like your foot was about to start rotating, but it kind of stopped. But of course, with the one leg drill, we still, even though we're reducing what we're doing with the lower body, we still need to do something with it. We want the knee to be bent on the reach back, and then as we're pulling through, to bring it up like this, and this is gonna help snap the hip back. Don't worry about that too much right now, but as you start throwing harder, it'll be hard to not do anything with the leg. It's gonna want to do something. And don't resist, or allow the pivot to happen. Don't resist it, of course. We don't want to be twisting into the knee. So sometimes you'll throw and not totally pivot, and I sometimes feel like I'm getting close to that point where I'm like, okay, I need to start pivoting, but it's I'm not quite having the momentum and rotation for it to fully happen, but I'm being aware that I'm getting close to feeling like it's going to start twisting, and don't want to injure the knee, of course. Did 48 miles per hour. And again, we're not trying to make a big deal about getting tons of power right now, but you're at 23 degrees of hyzer, so you are getting the nose over toes more, which is good. All right, so I was just looking at the footage, and it looks like Jake's starting out pretty well, but then as he gets into here, it looks like the elbow's dropping by his side. We want to keep it up. It's a little bit hard to see from the back view, so we're switching to the side view here. And this is something that's really common for people who reach back with rounding. The elbow starts coming into the chest early, and so now they're throwing with the elbow pinned to the chest or the side. So he's starting out good now instead of starting out with rounding, but then reverting into the old habits. We're going to get confirmation from the side view. So that also means maybe it wasn't happening before when you were throwing slower, or maybe I just didn't notice it at that time because I was looking at the reach back too much. I hadn't looked at the footage yet. So we're going to want to slow down again from the side view, confirm that the elbow's staying up during the power pocket, and then speed up and see if it starts collapsing the power pocket.
I tried to keep my shoulder up a lot that time.
Yeah, and something we do have to worry about, we'll have to go back and look at the footage, but when you try to keep the elbow up, you do not want to shrug your shoulder up So elbow up, but don't shrug the shoulder, because that'll give you a lot of tension in your upper back and neck area, and also doesn't help really with power or mobility.
That one felt really good too.
So these are pretty amazing stats here given all the factors. So this is Jake's first time ever working on his form. He's trying new form that, you know, just 20 minutes ago was the first time trying the new form. And he's been playing for 5 months. And this is a one leg standstill, which is not as powerful. It's just a regular standstill, which is less powerful than a one step standstill, which is less powerful generally than a run up. And he's already almost breaking 400 feet here, and he still has power left in the bank because I asked him to throw a little bit harder here to see if the form breaks down, but he's not at max effort, which we tried after, not really thinking about the form too much and doing a run up, and he broke 66 miles an hour. So pretty awesome potential here. He has a series on his channel, Road to 450 Feet, but he started it well, you know, with his rounding form, and he'll probably be able to break 450 feet with rounding, but it's going to be a lot more strenuous on his shoulder, and the accuracy and consistency is not going to be as good. So I think he can break 500 feet if he works on the form and accepts that there's going to be, you know, some getting worse before getting better situation.
Just be careful as you're trying to keep the elbow up. Sometimes, you know, different things will happen. Like when you're trying to keep the elbow up, you might be thinking to yourself and standing up while you're trying to keep the elbow up, and losing this nose over toes lean. We want to maintain that nose over toes lean throughout the whole throw.
Okay, two quick tips to close out. Okay, tip number one is to do what Garrett Gurthie is doing here at the start of his run up, and that's keeping his elbow up and his shoulder in a good position. Now, of course, you don't want it to feel too rigid, so at various parts during the run up, there'll be some movement to keep it feeling fluid, but the main idea is to build the muscle memory to keep the elbow up and the shoulder in a good position so that it automatically starts transferring into the power pocket. I see a lot of people before their run up and during their run up holding the disc with their elbow pinned to their side instead of their elbow up and their shoulder internally rotated. And so they're just reinforcing a bad habit that's going to carry over into the power pocket. So I recommend as you walk up to the tee before and during the run up, try to keep it in that up position, the elbow up and the shoulder internally rotated to build that muscle memory just for free on every tee box. Okay, so the last tip is just kind of a reminder that as you're working on your form, you should expect to have worse rounds where you score worse because you're kind of breaking your old form, but you haven't reached the milestone yet for your new form. So you're somewhere in a weird place in between that's difficult to be consistent at. So just remind yourself that it's going to be worth it in the long run. It's going to feel so much more satisfying in the long run than it will feel to, in the short term, have some good scoring rounds